Hey guys, did you know that the wooden sword got buffed? Yeah, we're gonna do something stupid with this. Pretty much all of the basic swords in Terraria got a buff in 1.4.4 because they really sucked, and they still do, but they suck a little less now. I was just trying to think about something to make a quick video about while busy with getting my college enrollment finished over the weekend and preparing to start my next work week, when I remembered these little tweaks that they made to the swords, and I was like, hey, what if I just took one of these and tried to kill the Eye of Cthulhu with it? So obviously, I took the weakest one and decided to go try and do just that, because I don't think I've ever tried to use a basic sword against any boss before, and I thought it might make a bit of a funny video. Now I know that this is no copper short sword versus wall of flesh video, but I still wanted to be prepared. So I grabbed some buffs, took up my trusty golden armor and a basic accessory set, and decided to have a go at it. And honestly, it wasn't that hard, only taking me 2 attempts. I guess the wooden sword needed a little less help than I thought it would. Okay, well, that was too easy. I had gone a little overkill with the buffs, so I nerfed down my food to the middle tier food buff and knocked off the wrath potions, which I figured made a more realistic potion setup for this point in the game. I reforged my accessories, keeping the same stat modifiers but weaker versions of them, and also removed my Bast statues that were in the arena, which give 5 extra defense to the player. And now that I'd nerfed myself into the ground, I gave it another shot, and I think this actually turned into something a lot more interesting. My strategy in the fight starts quite basic, with much more reckless movements in the first phase of the fight to try to rack up damage quickly, which is necessary because the low damage of the sword ends up elongating this fight, and this is the portion where you don't need to worry about dying as much because the boss deals less damage and doesn't have any crazy moves to burst you down. The hitbox of the sword ends up being incredibly awkward at all stages of the fight, as it's very hard to get damage on the Eye of Cthulhu without taking damage yourself because of the weapon's tiny range. In the first stage, you end up having to move really weirdly in order to get consistent hits, which generally came down to lining up hits as the boss charged at me and attempting to stay as close as possible to it while moving so that I wouldn't get knocked away and hit out of range. And that in itself was kind of strange and fun to mess around with, although also a little frustrating. But the intriguing part of this fight, to me, was the second phase, which interestingly turned into somewhat of a time and health management game, which isn't really a way that I've had to fight a boss before. Hitting the boss is easy enough, you pretty much follow the same kind of movements as the first phase, but because it's almost impossible to damage it without getting hit at least once in return in this phase, unless you're actually a god, which I happen to not be, you can't go crazy on bursting this thing down. Getting hits in during most of this phase comes down to timing and positioning, as you have to go after the boss right after it does its fast dashes, and then you have to start moving right before it does the move again so that you don't potentially get caught in a chain of hits. In all 4 of the fights I did like this, it ended up coming down to slowing down the aggro and relying on quick chip damage towards the end of the night to try and stay as healthy as possible, because when the Eye of Cthulhu gets to about 500 HP, there aren't any more opportunities to hit it before it starts dashing. And while I think you can get lucky hits with the back part of your sword swing without getting hit as it dashes behind you, I ended up mostly taking single hit trades with it, and as far as I can tell with this weapon, it literally just comes down to you banking enough HP to tank hits as you deal the final blows to the boss. I considered trying to run and stall for another potion charge, but I didn't know if I had enough time to actually do that, so I ended up making a judgment and just tanked it. And I ended up trading perfectly with the Eye of Cthulhu, and we killed each other at the same time. It just goes to show that each hit really does matter, and had I saved enough HP to take one more during the fight, I probably would have won it and remained alive. Regardless, that's a victory, even if it's a slightly sour one, but it was 10 at night and I had work the next day, so I figured I would just leave it at that. The fight was only made somewhat difficult due to time restrictions, but it ended up being a little more interesting to talk about than I thought it would be. I don't think you need me to tell you this, but don't fight the Eye of Cthulhu with a wooden sword, unless you're just an idiot like me. Even though it only took me 4 tries, this is about as helpless as I've ever felt in a boss fight. Certified not cool. That's gonna be all for this one though, just a short video to keep the content rolling. I hope you enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next video.